Hello, my name is Brian Milakovsky. I am a member of Bath's Community Forestry Committee, and I would like to talk today about protecting Bath's urban forest against the emerald ash borer, which is a threat that has reached our city, genuinely threatens a very significant number of our beautiful street trees, but which can be addressed. um, and I'd like to talk today about what the city is doing about that and what homeowners can do about the ash trees that are located on their own property. So I'll talk today a little bit about what ash trees we're talking about, what trees we're talking about, if you're not really well acquainted with ash trees as a species. What is the emerald ash borer and why does it threaten these wonderful trees? What can be done to combat the emerald ash borer? And then again, what the city of Bath is doing and what you can do. So, uh, the tree that we're most commonly talking about is the white ash. It's a quite common street tree in Bath. I think maybe a realistic estimate might be 8 to 10% of our street trees could be white ashes. It's a native species. It grows very well on moist slopes, so not dry and ledgy areas, but slopes where there's water moving through the soil, downslope, which describes very well a lot of the neighborhood of historic Bath, sloping down towards the Kennebec River. There are both a lot of ash trees planted on lawns and around houses, but there are also wild grown ash trees, especially in the gullies between properties all across the city. Um, Sometimes we do see another species around the city, which is green ash. Um, they're very hard to tell apart, and there isn't any important difference between them. Green ash is a little bit more associated with sites down near the river. Ash trees being an important part of our urban forest, they really provide a lot of important values to the city. Um, they can reach very large sizes and cast a really large shade footprint, which does a lot to help reduce the urban heat island effect, which is essentially the problem that paved areas in cities um, can dramatically heat up the urban environment, even small cities like Bath. And these shade trees help counter that, and ash is certainly one of the largest potential shade trees that we have. They do a lot to maintain and improve property values. I think you can imagine the impact that removing these two beautiful trees in these pictures might have on those homes. I think the way that big, beautiful shade trees affect a property value is that you really feel it in their absence. When they're gone, there's a lot of good studies about the impact that that has on perceived value of that real estate. So a lot of these beauties, I think, are doing a lot to contribute to the value of these amazing old homes. They certainly play a large role in maintaining the aesthetic of historic Bath. I think that ash trees are a very characteristic part of the New England landscape, and they're very harmonious with these old homes. Um, Being on the slope down to the river, these big trees with their enormous root systems help us manage stormwater, slow it down, keep more of it trapped in the soil and less of it moving immediately into our sewer system and down to the river. They also help filter air pollution in the city, such as what comes off of Route 1. And in a sort of holistic way, they're helping us with the climate resilience of the city as we try to keep it green and well shaded going into a warming climate. So we have all these wonderful things from ash trees, and yet they are mortally threatened by the emerald ash borer. This is an exotic insect accidentally introduced to the United States from East Asia. It is native to the cold temperate forests of the Russian Far East, northeastern China, where there are also ash trees, Manchurian ash trees. Manchurian ash trees are very well adapted to the emerald ash borer. American species of ash, such as uh, white ash, green ash, or black ash, which is the wonderful tree species used by the Abenaki peoples in Maine to make their traditional baskets. None of these species have a natural resistance to the emerald ash borer. What the borer does is its larvae core into the tree. The borer itself cores into the tree, leaves its larvae, which create what's called galleries, which are like little tunnels bored through the living cambium under the gray bark. And this eventually disrupts the movement of water and nutrients through the tree and kills the tree. Um, Extremely few ash trees are resistant in the United States. Some seem to persist through the emerald ash borer infestation, and forest scientists and pathologists and entomologists are studying those trees, trying to breed them, but they are an extremely small part of the population. Unfortunately, almost all ash trees in Maine will succumb to the emerald ash borer if they are left untreated, and we'll get to what treatment means in a few slides. Um, if you want to see what this looks like, Portland and places south and west are already losing their ash trees, both in urban and rural settings. Also, unfortunately, people keep moving this exotic pest around Maine in firewood, and it has reached places like Waterville. If you're driving along 95, uh, look at the two Waterville exits, and you'll see a lot of dead ash trees along the side of the highway. The symptoms of emerald ash borer infestation that we are already seeing in Bath are the following. On the right, this is from Middle Street in the south side of the city, south of Route 1. This is called blonding. It's when a tree already has emerald ash borers and their larvae inside it, and woodpeckers start stripping off the outer bark, trying to reach the beetles and larvae to eat them. We call this blonding because the trees start to have this lighter blonde look from the bark underneath that outer layer. Um, the more of this you see, the worse condition that tree is in. Right now, this is some of the worst blonding I've seen in Bath. It's just a very early stage. You can see trees, for instance, around Portland or in York County in Maine that are entirely blonde and they are also dead. So the more of this you see, the worse things are. Also, emerald ash borer stresses the trees and causes their canopies to thin out. We can see this on the left. This is on Lincoln Street. We took this picture last summer. Um, and actually, quite a few ash trees, the more I looked last year, had this look in Bath. The Maine Forest Service positively confirmed the presence of emerald ash borer in the city of Bath in 2024. It is their opinion that 2026, 2027 are when we're going to see this species, unfortunately, make itself known in the city. And those are also the times that are best to try to do something about it. Um, Once an ash tree is infested with the emerald ash borer, somewhere within a year and 5 years, it will succumb and die. Most of them, the vast majority of the trees. Um, a scary thing about ash trees is once they are dead, very rapidly they become quite brittle. Arborists talk about them as if they explode. You get your saw into the big branches, and all of a sudden, um, the branch is snapping and twisting, and it becomes very dangerous to take them down once they're dead. And you have to take them down piece by piece with the help of a bucket truck, and this gets way more expensive. So when ash trees die, they become a real hazard. Now, there are ways to to fight the emerald ash borer. This is the good news. Um, the most common practice to hold off mortality and keep an ash tree healthy is to inject it with one of several approved insecticides. The most common one is called emamectin benzoate. It is actually plugged into the tree. What you can see here is a tool called the arbor jet, which uses pressure to pump uh, insecticide into the tree. The tree then wicks up that insecticide and carries it up through its tissues all the way to the crown. And essentially, the tissues of the tree become toxic both to emerald ash borer and also to other insects that eat the tissue of the tree, including its bark or leaves. And that includes native insects. We do need to recognize if you do this, you will negatively impact the insects using that tree. But of course, they will be very severely impacted by the loss of this entire tree species. So I think that it's a very localized and justifiable impact on our native insect biodiversity to combat this incredibly destructive exotic insect. This provides 3, 5, 7 years of protection. There's some debate. It depends on the tree. I would say 3 to 5 years is the most you should assume that you could probably get protection, and three is the conservative estimate. So you have to keep doing this for a time, and I'll get to when maybe eventually we can stop doing this. Landowners, homeowners need to recognize that this is a cost that they will be bearing periodically going forward. This is done by licensed pesticide applicators, of which there are many in the state of Maine, and I'll get to that later. Um, Emamectin benzoate has been exhaustively studied by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's also been studied and approved by the Maine Board of Pesticides. By injecting it straight into the tree instead of spraying it or drenching it on the soil, you are, of course, really keeping the application of this pesticide in a very limited space. It doesn't dribble out of the tree. It doesn't flow downhill to the water. It will concentrate a little bit in the foliage of the tree, but studies have shown that when that foliage drops, only trace amounts of emamectin benzoate are left and not enough to pass along toxicity, for instance, to soil microorganisms. Also, ash trees pollinate through the wind, not through bees or other insects. That's really good news. That means that when the tree has this insecticide inside it, we will not be poisoning bees that fly up to get nectar from its flowers, or pollen. That pollen is spread by the wind, not by bees. I think it's important to recognize that while it can be expensive to treat an ash tree against emerald ash borer, again, put that next to the costs of taking down a street tree or a tree that hangs over your house. So, treating an ash tree with a 13.5-inch diameter is measured at the breast height, about 4.5 feet. So imagine a tree that is about as big around as a large dinner plate. Treating an ash tree like that could cost about $275 every 3 to 7 years. So maybe you have to treat a few around your house. It's an investment that we have to do periodically going forward. Um, Taking that tree down, especially if it begins to die and become brittle, quickly becomes a multi-thousand-dollar investment. And then you also lose the tree and all of the values that it gives. So you have to put out a lot of money to have it taken down, and then it's no longer producing value for you on your property, as opposed to treating it periodically for a smaller sum, the one that you have to put in every 3 to 5 years going forward. Something we've heard is that really large trees in really nice neighborhoods. So we heard this from someone who worked in Westchester County, New York, when emerald ash borer went through there more than a decade ago. Um, and I think it could probably apply to some places like the Washington Street neighborhoods with the finest old homes. Uh, to take down a dead ash tree with power lines, really nice homes, roads, um, sidewalks nearby. Individual homeowners in Westchester County were sometimes spending up to $20,000 if they had several really large ash trees that had all of what's called these intrusions out over areas where there's hazard, like your porch, the top of your house, the power lines, or the uh, sidewalk. Simply having to have a flagger who stops and controls traffic greatly increases the cost of taking down a tree. On top of that, if you then want to plant a tree afterwards to replace it, right now, that's also a multi-hundred-dollar investment. The $330 figure shown here is something that the city of Bangor estimated in its Emerald Ash Borer plan. So we think it really makes a lot of economic sense for homeowners to consider treating against emerald ash borer, both because of the comparison of the kind of costs that you're going to incur, and also because then you get to keep these wonderful trees. So, how long will we need to keep injecting ash trees with insecticide? The hope is not forever. The U.S. Forest Service and the Maine Forest Service are releasing three different species of parasitic wasps that attack emerald ash borer, plant their eggs, inject their eggs through their stinger inside the larvae, and those eggs then eat the larva from the inside out and kill it. These are population control agents, also brought over from Siberia, Eastern Asia, and exhaustively studied to make sure they would not threaten native biodiversity of insects in the state of Maine. And they have been approved, well, all over the eastern seaboard, and they have been approved for release. So the Maine Forest Service is releasing them in all the counties of the state. They still have not found a site yet in Saginaw County. Once they do, hopefully those populations will start to gradually grow together with the populations of emerald ash borer. With time, it's really hoped that they will tamp down population growth of the ash borer. But very importantly, they will not stop the first wave of death of mature ash trees. Their population simply can't grow fast enough to catch up with the ash borer. So the Maine Forest Service says if you want to keep a beautiful ash tree on your lawn alive, do not count on these wasps. They will help in the future to maybe help future ash trees not be killed by the emerald ash borer. You need to use insecticide for the one that's on your lawn today if you want to keep it alive. But eventually, we hope we can use less insecticide because the biological control agents will be doing their job. So, what is the city of Bath doing about this? The city applied for funding through the state of Maine that has a federal source. And we have been preliminarily informed that we've received up to $70,000 of funding directly to the city. It's still being firmed up. Federal funding is moving slowly these days. Um, but it will be both for treating some street trees and taking some down that don't have high enough vigor or are too dangerous and should be taken down before they become brittle. So some of it is for treatment, some of it is for preemptive removal of dangerous ash trees. The city's also devoting some budgetary tree maintenance funds to the treatment of ash trees. This relates to trees that are on city property, which is things like cemeteries, parks, but also street trees, which I believe are those, I think, 20 or 25 feet from the center of the street. So, for instance, this one that you see right here. Um, the city will not do this in-house, but will rather contract professional arborists to do the treatment. And where it is necessary to remove ash trees because they're just not going to be healthy enough to survive the stress, even if they are being treated, the city would like to diversify the kinds of trees being replanted. Uh, what really needs to be avoided in this era of so many exotic tree pests and pathogens is planting a lot of the same tree everywhere. So city will be looking at a diversified mix of tree species that grow well in our warming climate here in Mid-Coast Maine. Um, that's what the city's doing, but the majority of the trees the ash trees that we see around Bath are not the responsibility of the city. They are on the private property of homeowners. The city doesn't have any resources right now to offer homeowners, unfortunately, to treat those trees. But based on the economics we showed earlier, we very strongly encourage those homeowners to consider treatment as probably the most economically rational uh, approach to the emerald ash borer reaching you, especially for trees that provide you with a lot of value, like shade and aesthetics, and also potentially would be very dangerous and difficult to take down if they died. For instance, they hang over your porch. So we strongly encourage homeowners to look into hiring arborists to inject your ash trees. The Maine Forest Service maintains a database of um, licensed professional pesticide applicators, including those who can treat ash trees. If you use this QR code, it will take you to a PDF of the full list of those applicators in the state of Maine. And many of them are in the mid coast, some of them are beyond. Um, in the mid coast, a lot of these arborists have a very high workload treating trees against brown-tail moth. They're, I think, still available for this kind of work. If you find they're very busy, look farther abroad to other counties. This is a service offered by very many arborists and tree care maintenance professionals in the state. The price is generally set by the diameter of the tree. The larger the tree, the more expensive it will be to treat. So please look at this list, but also if you have questions about your ash trees, um, if you would like some consultation, do I have ash trees? Do I have a chance to get this tree? What is its vigor like? Do I have a chance to get it through the emerald ash borer infestation or any other kinds of questions? The Bath Community Forestry Committee is available for consultation. The easiest way to reach us is that we have a public on Facebook, Bath Community Forestry Committee. Um, and we would strongly encourage you to reach out if you have further questions. We strongly believe that this is the time to do something about emerald ash borer in the city of Bath. The city is going to try to do a lot, but we really encourage homeowners to also play a role in protecting our urban forest. Thank you very much.